Okay, just getting the live stream settled. Welcome. We're going to have various people joining the Zoom, the live, and so we're going to navigate a little bit of that. Before we dive in, I wanted to share a little bit about the Healer's Ways, this course that is so near and dear to my heart, that we've been creating for years and developing to be something that's really transformative. We wanted to create something for space holders, guides, emerging facilitators who feel called to support others through deep healing. This course is for anyone getting into the healing arts, or anyone who's already in the healing arts. If you're a yoga instructor, massage therapist, or if you're in corporate and you're looking for that next career for yourself, something that really fires you up. And so whether you're working with sound, healing, energy, integration, or any other somatic and spiritual tools, this course is going to be designed to help you step into that role with clarity, confidence, and integrity. It's not about just having another certification. This is really an initiation for people by people that are on the ground doing the work. So many courses are given by people kind of in that more sterile educational environment. And yes, they may know a lot about a topic, but unless you're really being taught by someone who is doing the work, it's just a little bit different. There are nuances that come from experience. And so all the people that are teaching in this course are people that do the work. And I think that's a really important aspect to what we're doing. This is about remembering. This is about a community-based container to help you embody the healer within. And while learning, you're also going to get these practical tools to guide others safely and soulfully. So let me see here. We have people joining. And Rachel just texted. Okay, she's in, she's coming. Okay, so get ready. Rachel's going to be joining us soon. I wanted to give a little bit of an intro before we jumped in. And if you're joining the Zoom, just please make sure you're on mute. Some other things I wanted to cover is that this is going to be a community-based container. So you're going to be in a community with the instructors, with me, with your fellow students, that is going to allow you to have this kind of real-time continual discussion. And so it really is going to be vibrant, and it's not going to be just like logging into an online course. And if you miss it, you're watching the recording, although that will be an opportunity. You will always have access to the recorded lessons. But really, it's going to be an opportunity for sharing, for support, for feeling like you're not alone in this walk. And throughout the course, we're going to be talking about really important skills for facilitators. We're going to be talking about being trauma informed. We're going to be talking about modalities like IFS, internal family systems, and how amazing that is in a coaching platform. We're going to be talking about energy and protection with various ceremonies. We're going to be talking about really conscious communication and conscious listening. So as a facilitator or a guide or a coach, how well are you listening to your clients and able to reflect that back to them? We're going to be learning about psychedelic integration and how important that is for people. There are so many integration coaches needed at this point, because a lot of people are taking matters into their own hands. They're not willing to wait anymore for getting access to a psychedelic compound. Yesterday, we talked to Ryan, who was talking about how cannabis can be a psychedelic medicine. And of course, we're going to be dealing with other really fantastic topics, like what we're going to be hearing from Rachel in how to learn more about someone through astrology, how to help someone with using herbology. There are so many different ways that we can be working with people instead of pigeonholing ourselves into one thing. Having a broad set of knowledge to ask people about in order to best service them is probably one of the most important things we can offer in this course. There are lots of courses that'll help you go deeper into certain topics, but very often you won't know what those topics are until you learn some basics about them. And so that's why we have this course to really help you integrate many different things in your knowledge base so that you can help people in a way that's really going to service them. Okay. This is fun about doing live is you're you have to be aware of all your flaws. And so um 1 second. So I'm chatting with Rachel right now. So we had originally planned on starting at 1/2 past the hour. And so I got my wires crossed. So this is what's fun about doing something live is that I'm always starting things at the top of the hour, but she was available at the bottom of the hour. So we'll see if she can join. Okay, 1 second. She says she's on. That's funny. But I don't see her. Okay. So just kind of getting back to talking about what we're going to be offering with the Healer's Ways. What I do want to do is share the page really quickly. Oh, here she is. Here she is. Okay. There she is. Rachel, you're dealing with my mistake. Thank you so much.
No, you're good. I actually was on at one, but I was on a Google Meet link instead of this one that was also attached. So I think I just,
You
but we're
gotta
here.
love the Google Calendar that it in like I set up a Zoom and yet Google likes to, throw in a meet button also. And so unless you delete that, here's a little tip. You have to delete the meet button because that happens often. So one of the things we're going to learn in this course is how to roll with the punches. But I'm so honored and excited that you're here today, Rachel. I've been giving people kind of like a roundabout overview of the course. And of course, now that you're here, I really want to read what we have on our page about you. So just give me a second because I really want people to know as much as they can about you heading into this talk. So what we have on our page, and you can go read this, is that Rachel is an evolutionary astrologer and transformational guide dedicated to helping individuals come home to themselves, which I love that. She supports clients in cultivating radical self-trust, aligning with their soul's deepest truth, and learning to live from a place of inner knowing rather than external noise. Rachel's work isn't about predicting the future or defining who someone should be. Instead, she uses the birth chart as a sacred map, a guide back to the most authentic and empowered version of self. Through this deep, soul centered work, Rachel invites each individual to uncover their unique rhythm, release outdated patterns, and remember that their truth is always the way forward. So, welcome, Rachel. This is just going to be such a fun talk. I know we have some people on the Zoom. We also have people tuning in live. So what I would love to start with is if you can just tell us a little bit about how you got on this path, a little bit about your life story that you feel comfortable sharing, and just go from there.
Yeah, of course. So I've actually been in the personal development world for a really long time. It started when I was 9. I was actually a very isolated, highly sensitive 9-year-old, and I was obese and I didn't have any friends. And I also didn't really know how to talk. I remember I would just be sitting in elementary school watching the classroom, like seeing people interact and just wondering how they did it. Like I was just I was like in this sea kind of.
Mm,
So I felt very different from everyone else, and I was obese because I would go home and I would just closet eat. I didn't know
mm,
how to manage my own emotions, I would say. And so one day I found out about this weight loss camp and I begged my parents to let me go because they said if you went for 6 weeks, you'd lose 23 pounds. And I desperately wanted to look like the other kids. And so I went and I lost 23 pounds in 6 weeks. I put everything into it. And that kickstarted my healing journey, but it also kickstarted eating disorder journey where I just wanted to find freedom and I wanted to be able to trust my body and trust myself and just feel healthy without having to put this much effort in. It was like the start of me putting so much effort into my life. So I went on like a 20-year journey obsessively learning everything about nutrition. I got my degree in college. I went on the dietetics track to become a dietitian. And then I got certified in giving lab tests and did all of these things. I never found that answer to freedom. If anything, it just pushed me deeper and deeper into a rock bottom. And so then it was like this first moment. I was 24 and I just could not bear to think about food in that way ever again. Like I couldn't, it was like consuming my whole life. And I remember I just surrendered. I was like, I'm just going to eat healthy foods. I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm going to stop when I'm full and just see what happens because I'm going to die if I keep thinking about this.
mm,
And so I did. And within a few months, I felt this connection to my body that I never felt before. I always said before this point, I never felt intuitive. If you gave me two options, I'd always choose wrong. So I'd overthink it to death. And so, like, I never knew what people meant when they talked about intuition. But for the first time, I could feel it in my body. And it started with food, actually. And in 3 months, I stabilized at a body weight that previously was so hard for me to maintain, but it was just happening without me trying at all, just listening to my body. And I felt healthy and I felt great. And then I thought to myself, if I could heal that, what else can I heal? Because I still was lacking self love and I still didn't have a lot of girlfriends. Like that was still my wound, feeling very lonely. Like I didn't have many people. And so I started attending women's retreats just to like put myself in that environment. And it really opened me up. And at all of these retreats, all these people would see this astrologer. And I remember at the time thinking like self-love's impossible. You know, I healed food, but you can't heal self-love. That's like a lifelong thing. So I'm attending all these retreats. I fucking love them. I see this astrologer everyone at these retreats are telling me about. And at the time I had wanted to host my own retreat. I was like, maybe I could bring nutrition in. Like I know that really well. But I didn't have the balls to. I had no clients. I had no friends before this, you know? Who was I? But at my first astrology reading, she told me about my past life and what she said sounded like I had hosted retreats before. Like I had done this before. And so it was my first time using astrology. This was actually the beginning of my Saturn return, which is so funny because my Saturn's in Aquarius and Aquarius rules astrology and it's in the fifth house of passion and risk. So of course I like started taking risks on my passion at that time. And I decided to host my first retreat. I was like, well, if she said I've done this before, I'm going to do it. I didn't have credit cards at the time. I asked my mom if I could put the retreat house on her credit card. She said yes. She's the best. She's an angel. In 1 month, I filled that thing with 14 people. I shocked myself. How? I had never had any friends before, any clients. And it just went so well. Like, it was so fun. It was like a quantum leap in my life, I would say. And so then I just went on to host 6 more retreats in about 2 years. I'm an obsessive person, if you can't tell. Um, and after I'd say the sixth, seventh retreat, um, I had been using astrology the whole time. I had been obsessively diving into it. I'm a person who learns things really quickly because of my obsession. It's like all I think about from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And then I dream about it probably too. Um, so I learned astrology within a couple years, which is a lot faster than a lot of people. And I just started helping people, but I didn't feel like retreats resonated anymore. And an old version of me just like sticks with something to death with a death grip, like the nutrition thing. Um, and so I thought, okay, like instead of continuing that pattern, my birth chart says I'm here to like change patterns rapidly and not really stay on one path. So I did another surrender. I didn't really mention that when I decided to host my first retreat, I was also in a surrender at that time. I forgot this part of the story, but I had been trying to build a business for a year and nothing was working. And I had taken a month off from trying to build a business. That's when I saw the astrologer. That's when this whoosh of passion came through me. So I thought, well, what if I do that again? So I take like 3 or 4 months off and I'm just like completely surrendered in my life. And I tell myself I'm just going to follow the fun. So, of course, I just dive deeper into astrology and it just becomes my whole world where I don't really know how to talk to people unless I'm talking about astrology at that point. And at that point, a lot of people were reflecting to me how much I was helping them. And then before you knew it, I was an astrologer. I said I was an astrologer my first month. I made 6 grand. It was just, and that's kind of been the theme in my life is I use astrology to create these pivots, to surrender into the unknown. It's almost like I think of them like training wheels on my intuition. It just provides that like I don't know, that railing I can hold on to when I'm taking, because I'm a big risk taker, if you haven't been able to tell by the story so far. But it gives me that peace when I take that risk. And every time it's panned out into this huge new evolution in my life. So yeah, that's a little bit of my background and then how I got into astrology.
Wow. And then, so when did you transition to mostly just working with people individually, or how does your work show up for you now? Like, how did that transition? Can you follow the story a little bit more? And then how did you kind of come into your own with what you're doing now?
Yeah, so hmm. It was more so that like I've always been a person when I'm passionate about something, I help people naturally. Like it's not something I've ever tried to do. When I was passionate about nutrition, I just couldn't, it was the only thing I knew how to talk about. And so then people would be around and they'd get these ahas from me and then I'd realize, "Oh, I'm good at teaching this." So when it came to astrology, there was so many different instances. But I can use my partner as an example, Ryan, since he's also in this whole arena. So I learned how to interact with Ryan differently through
Mm.
astrology. He has a Virgo moon and he's a Virgo rising. And before I really understood that about him, I never wanted him to help me with anything. I'm a very no one come into my bubble. I'm in my own bubble. Don't help me kind of person up until that point. And so he always wanted to help me and I just shut him down. No, no. And I realized that's like what makes him feel fulfilled. It's what makes him feel safe. And so I consciously started to invite his help in. And the first time I did, he was just like ecstatic and jumping up and down like a little boy. It was so cute. So that's like a small example in my relationship. But with my clients, like I just worked with a client and um a big part of her birth chart was about coming home to herself. That's really what I help a lot of people with. It's what people come to me for because usually they start much more in their head, like me. That was like a big part of my journey, right? Learn everything outside of me. I can't trust what's in here. And so I had this client come to me. She had trauma from the Maui fires. Her family went through all of that. And so ever since then, they kind of were just, it was this ungrounded feeling in her where she was trying to start her business and she was listening to all these different business coaches and she was a mom of four. So she's like feeling over responsible to all her kids. And she wasn't feeling grounded and settled in herself. She felt very disconnected from herself. And she felt like she didn't deserve to just have pleasure and to be at peace. She had to keep giving and giving, and the giving was never enough, you know?
Mm.
And so we started working together in her owning her truth because that's another big part of her birth chart is like anchoring into her truth. And we use this thing called self-concept work, which is basically you just repeat your self-concept to yourself, which hers was, I follow my truth and my life opens up in miraculous ways, or something like that. I forget. This was a while ago, like 6 months ago when she first started this. But within a month, what started happening was is there were these moments pop up where she could speak her truth to her husband on what she really needed
Mm,
emotionally. And it felt raw and it felt scary, but it was what her chart was asking of her. It was her biggest life lesson. It was her north node. So I use north node and south node in astrology a lot. That's the karmic destiny points in someone's birth chart. And the south node is your past life, but also where you've overdone the energy and you're wounded. For her, it was in Capricorn of over responsibility. She felt responsible to everyone. Um,
mm,
her north node was in Cancer. So the north node's your karmic destiny. The more you lean into that energy, the more everything else in your chart works out. That's why I decided to host my first retreat. It was all like aligned. Hers is in Cancer, which is the house of the mother, meeting your needs, home. Eighth house is like trauma, death and rebirth, truth. And so that's like why we were focusing on that.
yeah,
And so every time she'd have to speak her truth, it would feel really raw. And that's what the eighth house and Scorpio energy feels like. She would know the feeling like, oh, but she would do it. She'd have to settle in her body. And after a few months, this girl was just speaking her truth left and right. She was meeting her own needs. She was setting boundaries. Her relationship with her husband was shifting, where she no longer felt guilty about getting a facial. Like she used to hide the fact that she would get a facial from her husband, even though they have a lot of money. They're very well off, but she would hide it, thinking she didn't deserve it.
mm,
And so, I mean, it's been 6 months later. This girl she just does whatever she wants now. She's been telling me how she called it coming home to herself because I remember when she wanted to first started working with me, she said, I just want to give 0 Fs. I just want to be able to
mhm,
say what I want to say. And that's what happened for her. That's what I find happens with a lot of people with astrology. It's your permission slip. It's your
mm.
permission slip to be you and to really meet your needs.
That's really important. And I can see this being such an important aspect as someone who serves others, right? Just to be really self-aware, really able to understand your own gifts, your own talents, your own strengths, and also being able to tune in a little bit to where there could be some changes made, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I use it for myself too on a daily basis. Like, I literally just did something that was raw and uncomfortable this morning because it's the Capricorn full moon. I was looking at my chart. I was having a feeling around over giving. I have that same pattern. Obviously, that's why I attract people who have that pattern. And because I knew that was in my full moon, I gave myself permission to send the text to not overgive. And it was so uncomfortable. But yeah, it's great for helping people and for your own permission.
Yeah. And so, like, how would you say astrology could support someone in the healing arts or a coach or a space holder on their path? And how might they either use it for themselves or learn aspects of it that will help them in their work?
There's so many different things because it not only helps you understand yourself, it helps you understand how to interact with other people. You
Mm,
know, every single person I work with is different and we have a different path and it's based on their birth chart. You know, I could try to just steer everyone down to the same path, like come home to yourself, own your truth, this. But like, for example, I have another client and a big part of his chart is like he's also about owning truth, but it's more around him being a change maker
mhm,
and being more rebellious and not be afraid to disrupt the molds. And so, like, it gives you that intricacy into where to steer people, right? Like, my client, the first client I talked about, Hani, who wanted to come home to herself, she had been listening to all of these business coaches before and nothing felt good to her. And they all told her that she couldn't do what she really wanted to do. And so I think, one of the first people to give her permission to just trust herself and listen to herself. Because also a big part of her chart is she's here to redefine something for humanity, like redefine mothering or redefine family in some way. And if I pushed her into like what I learned on how you build a business, or like to teach people how to do mothering the way most mothers would get it, then she's not going to fulfill her path and her destiny. And so I think it helps you as a healer and facilitator keep an open mind and actually serve what they need versus just coming from like your own experience all the time.
Now, have you ever had a client that kind of presented with one personality, this outward personality, and you read their chart and it's like completely different than the way they present? And then what do you do? Like, how do you approach that in a gentle manner where you're like, how are you showing up?
Okay, I have a really good example. So I have one client, he's about 60 and he owns a bunch of different businesses. He's like very like stoic, um, man of few words, like only gonna talk when he's ready, has something to say, gets shit done, makes stuff happen. And you would never know this man has a Cancer moon opposite his midheaven. But like I could see in his chart, and I actually got this from his reading too, like because when I pointed it out, he was like, "Yeah, I learned like you don't show emotion, like you don't connect to emotion, you cut that off when you're out in the world. Like that's a no-no." That's what his family taught him. He's from Ireland, originally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what his family taught him. And so I said, actually, like a part of your chart is you're here to combine your emotions and like your sensitivity with your midheaven. Whenever I see moon opposite the career line, they're supposed to come together. It's not supposed to be one without the other. So the imbalance comes by leaning too far into one of the energies. And he took it to heart. That's kind of gently how I said it. He's really open-minded and he took it to heart. And so he started practicing getting into his emotions. He started having this conversation with his wife, and his wife was like, "Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen you be emotional the whole time I've known you." And so he didn't even know like what it meant. And so like we started with connecting to food in his body a little bit, kind of the way, because Cancer moon is really connected to nourishment and meeting its needs. And so we focused on all the ways he can connect to how things felt and meet his needs there. So we did food, but also I sent him this woman she does this like rewilding program. And have you heard of Sabrina, like rewilding with Sabrina?
I haven't.
I like her because she does these embodiment exercises that really get stuff out. Like I spend an hour doing her stuff and you're like screaming and tapping really deep in and like making different sounds from different parts of your body. And so I sent it to him and he said that he actually released something for the first time, like connected to a part of like an emotional part of him that he never even knew was there. And so I actually found that maybe it made him more open-minded to even like look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you were talking, the first thing I thought about is how interesting it would be to couple the things you're finding in their chart with other practices. Like I immediately went to IFS, being an IFS practitioner, like helping a client when they see kind of some disparity in what the chart's showing, what they and how they present themselves is like, oh, let me use some IFS to get in touch with those parts that I put aside because I had to present a certain way because of either expectations of my family or where I live or where I came from or trauma that happened to me. I mean, I could see it working with so many different things, breath work or, that this other program that you're talking about. So it's really cool how you can couple astrology with various modalities to help you dive deeper into who you really are.
Yeah, and it's funny you say the parts work thing because that is how I look at a birth chart. I actually look at every single planet in someone's birth chart as a different part of them.
Wow,
And you get to see the relationship of all those parts based on the aspects they make to each other, which is really cool.
that is really cool. I want to go back and go over my chart and look at parts. But so what do you think, like in your own life, what part of your own chart challenged you but later became a gift for you?
Oh God. There's so many things. I'm like, what do I pick? So I have a really strong control mechanism in my chart. If you have a exact degree aspect from Pluto to your sun, and I have it in opposition, Pluto's at 24 degrees, my sun's at 24 degrees. It's very rare, but Pluto's the planet of control and trauma and death and rebirth. And so I came into this world consciously controlling. Like, and it actually, when I learned that about my chart, it made a lot of sense because I have memories being in my crib. Like, I remember not being able to logically say things, but I remember what I was consciously thinking, if that makes sense.
Yep. Mhm.
And I've been control. I remember when I was in two in a restaurant, I wasn't talking, and this lady came over and said, "Wow, your daughter's so good. She doesn't talk." And I remember thinking, or my consciousness saying to me, "Okay, so if you want to be good, you don't talk that much," which kind of started me not talking going into elementary school. So I was so control. Um, I'm here to surrender control and step into my power, right? That's what happened with food. That was control that turned into surrender. That's how I started hosting retreats. So I know anytime I'm feeling helpless and blocked and frustrated, because that's what Pluto does. It makes you feel helpless, like you've tried everything and there's no other option, you know?
Mhm.
And so I've learned when I feel that way to let go, to not do anything, to get as present in my body as possible and to meditate, even if it takes a few months. And so yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest gifts. Like knowing that about my chart has taught me, it's made me really brave with taking risks in that way.
Mhm. And what's this is kind of a segue, but we're doing a live right now. And one of the places we're broadcasting is LinkedIn. And so I'm imagining like all these corporate people going, astrology, what what is this? And so a question I really want to ask you is how do you explain astrology in a way for someone who's more, you know, I don't know, 3D oriented, I guess, someone who's kind of more scientific in their thought process. How do you explain astrology in a way that makes someone soften and maybe think a little bit more, maybe become more open to it?
Okay. You cannot predict exact things in astrology, and I think that that throws a lot of people off. I will never tell someone this is exactly what's going to happen, and if I do, it's a mistake on my part. Like I did
Right.
not mean to do that,
Yeah.
you know? Um, I look at astrology like the ocean. So there's currents in the ocean, right?
Mhm.
Um, and actually, the ocean is connected to the moon tides. We have scientific evidence. The moon shifts and change, goes in different phases. We have different tides in the ocean, right? So it creates different energetic pulls.
Mhm.
That's how I look at the planets moving in the sky and interacting with each other. They are creating an energetic environment.
Mhm.
And so astrology is just explaining the environment and telling you that you can, like, here's how I like to look at each planet. Each planet has like a higher expression of an environment and a lower expression.
Mhm.
And so I like to match the environment with how I'm feeling. I like to use it to be introspective. If I'm feeling a certain way and then I hear this is the environment, it helps me explore and reflect on my feelings. It's almost like astrology is a mirror for my feelings,
Mhm.
not to say, yes, this thing's going to happen in 10 years, you know? It's actually very practical when you use it that way. And here's the thing, you create your own reality.
Mhm.
So you use it as a co-creative tool, not as a predictive tool. If you know right now the north node's in Pisces, like an energetic current is we're stepping into the unknown.
Mhm.
We're dissolving an old way of being. Virgo's on the south node. Virgo is our day to day. It's over analyzing. It's excessiveness and trying to like do too much, be of service. Like it's, when we don't want to go into the unknown and we try to fix it more. Okay, well, I'll do this and I'll do that. And okay, I can edit this. I can make this better. We're shedding the overthinking and the excessiveness in our old day to day right now. Virgo's work and service. A lot of people, I'm sure, are leaving their work, not wanting to do what they used to do, and they're going into the unknown. Like, I can just say that's the energetic container we're in, and I'm sure someone listening can find in their life how that energy relates to them right now. So it's never tell it's not this like weird woo-woo thing that's like telling you exactly who you are. It's a mirror for you. And if
Right.
you use it in that way, it's very practical.
I imagine it's kind of like reading tarot. It's like a divination, right? Where if you're really in tune to the whole process, you're able to look at the scenario, the map that's presented to you, and read into. I think that's probably one of your gifts, right? Is like just this intuitive way of reading someone's chart where it's like, oh, I see this, and you're kind of getting some of that information based on what you're seeing in their chart. Does that make sense?
Totally. So now that I'm very tuned into my intuition, like from that story I told you before, it's only grown since I've used astrology because I usually can feel what's in another person already. And then when I look at their chart, it provides a map to what I'm feeling. And so then I just, during a reading, share what I'm feeling with what I'm seeing. And then
Right.
I allow them to tell me how it fits into their life, actually. And that's how I have the most impactful readings. And also, it's how people are like, what? How do you know that? That's crazy, blah, blah, blah. But it's not, I think it's because I'm co-creating with them too, that they believe it more, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I know just from my experience from you reading my chart that we didn't really know each other. It was just kind of like, we had met through Ryan, and it was kind of like, oh, that, Ryan's partner, and you're like, oh, this woman Ryan's working with. And it was remarkable the first time we kind of sat together, and it was like you were reading my life. And there was no reason for it. It was like you couldn't have taken my chart and applied it to anyone. Like a lot of people are like, oh, it's just generalizations. And I was like, no, there were very specific things in my chart where it was like, you see my soul.
That, yeah, yeah. The thing is I think we all have the answers and we can all feel things and we're all intuitive. I think that we came up with astrology. I believe it's a map of our consciousness. Like I believe we came up with all of this just based off of us intuitively noticing how the planets were impacting the Earth.
Mm,
Um, I heard people who are big wilderness people and they're in nature all the time. They can tell you if a storm's about to come, even if it looks completely sunny and the storm's not coming for 6 hours, because they track these micro energetic patterns. They can feel it. They became attuned to it. And that's how I think astrology came here too, is my belief.
yeah. And it's so interesting. There's just so much to the energetic field that I think we're just beginning to tap into that's going to make a true science out of a lot of things that people think are kind of woo woo. And so it's very interesting to see how things are changing and how people are becoming more aware of what's out there. Um, so, my next question is: are there any specific, I don't know, transits or placements that things that healers need to really be attuned to in insofar as an astrological view?
Yeah, people's moon signs are so important. Everyone looks at the sun sign. We all know our sun signs, the day we were born, the month you're in, you know. But the moon sign in astrology is associated with the soul.
Mm,
It's like that inner subjective view of reality that you have. It's how you filter all of reality through. And a lot of us, especially over, I'd say, the last, as the patriarchy has formed and we've moved away from more of that feminine energy, that connection to that intuition, we've moved away from our soul, our moon energy. And so it's really helpful to focus on someone's moon. That's like the foundation of who they are. It's where all their other magic stems from. So if you can get them to meet their moon's needs, that can be so helpful. But then There's some more generational planets, but it also speaks to where they got trauma from the collective society. So Pluto, I already mentioned it, but it's literally the planet in your chart where you have trauma. And it's not just trauma in this life, it's
Yeah.
lifetimes of trauma. It's where you're going to go about controlling in your life, where you're going to get wherever Pluto is the area of life you get triggered around most, where you have the most power struggles.
Mhm.
Um, it's probably the most painful planet to heal through because it's literally like an ego death when you heal a Pluto wound. But Pluto actually is also associated with ayahuasca and plant medicine ceremonies, obviously, because it brings that shadow to light in some plant medicine ceremonies you'll do. So, looking at Pluto and Pluto's aspects to any personal planets in someone's chart, which the personal planets are the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, um, and in the Moon. And if Pluto is making an aspect to those personal planets, especially like the sun, then your trauma is tied into the core of who you are and it's part of how you reach success. So there's so many different parts in the chart where you can be like, oh, I'm not finding success. I feel drained of life force energy. I'll look at the sun. Oh, I'm feeling like I'm overgiving and depleted and not aligned with my life and like I'm not even connected to myself. I'll look at the moon. Oh, I want to know where I'm going to feel powerless and helpless and where I can come into my power and heal through heal through forgiveness and truth and vulnerability. I'm going to look at Pluto. Um, but I mean, we can look at Neptune too, because Neptune is it's the spiritual planet. It's connected to limitless possibilities, but it's also a fog. And so it can show us where we self-sacrifice and project and don't have good boundaries.
Mhm.
Um, I could literally probably talk about every planet in the birth chart, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine we could be here all day. Um, but in the interest of time, for someone who's feeling maybe lost right now, maybe someone just kind of stumbling on this recording, it could be even months from now, years from now. If someone's feeling lost, where is a good place for them to start with astrology?
They're feeling lost. I love the nodes. I know I talked about the north and south node, but if you do your north node, it's like I said, it's a new energy for you in this lifetime. It's not familiar. It's completely out of your comfort zone. But the more you lean into that archetype, the more everything else in your chart just kind of naturally aligns and evolves. So, like for example, my North Node is in Sagittarius in the third house. I'm learning to talk, to communicate in this lifetime. Kind of like my story, I told you I didn't talk very much, like the first long period of my life, but I'm also learning to own my truth. And so I've been really practicing, like it's something that I always come back to. Okay, how can I own my truth more? Something I have to work through is like own my truth. I don't need to prove. I don't need to care about being misunderstood. So because I can lean into that energy, it's something I'm constantly trying to remind myself of. Because here's something about people's North Node is you're literally like a toddler there until you're 36. You're gonna keep trying to walk and make it happen. It's like a toddler trying to walk or a baby trying to walk and they keep falling and crying, but then they try to walk again. And then by the time you're 36 to 38, that's the nodal maturation. Usually it's a really tough time in people's life, 36 to 38, because of that nodal maturation. Um, but after that time, you kind of come more into yourself.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it makes me laugh because in The Hobbit, they don't become adults till they're 33. I was like, oh, The Hobbit, just exactly. They knew. But I, I I never heard you say that before. And 36 to 38 was pivotal in my life. And so now I need to really think that through and think about what was going on because I had some major tragedy and difficulty. And then afterwards, it really felt like I was reborn in some ways. Like it was okay, here I am. Now I'm a big girl now. So yeah, that's very interesting to hear. And I'm going to look into that more. But in regards to, so I'm going to cycle back to the course and having students realize, you're not you can't possibly learn everything there is to know in a module about astrology. But can you share a little bit about what you're thinking with the students of what you're going to share?
Yeah, because there's two, I think I'm gonna do two modules we talked about. So one of the modules I want to do is I want to talk about everyone's rising sign, their ascendant, and how it sets up their whole chart. And I talked about at one point in this conversation about the idea of a self-concept. And when how I had my client be like, I speak my truth and my life works out in miraculous ways, or like that was her new self-concept. And then her life started to
Mhm.
congregate around that. That's how the rising sign, that's your identity in your birth chart. So everyone has one based on the time you were born. I know you're a Taurus rising, right? And I'm a Libra rising. We're actually both Venus ruled, so we're both relationship people. That's our identity. Um, so what's cool about the rising sign is you have 12 different pie slices in your birth chart. And I almost look at a birth chart as a life wheel. If anyone's seen a life coach, they use this thing called a life wheel where they split it up into pie slices. They go around and they're like, rate this area of life on a scale of 1 to 10. And then they decide how they're going to work on each area of life based on that. That's what your birth chart is. If you see it split up into different pie slices, each of those is a different area of your life. And each one builds off each other. So what your first house, the first pie slice is your identity, it's your appearance. Your rising sign is actually how you learn to survive as a child. It's how you at your earliest age. It's why you took on those characteristics and it flavors your whole life. But in the zodiacal wheel, the zodiac signs go in order, right?
Mhm.
So if we think about 12 pie slices and it's starting with the first, and we're going to put your rising sign. So if you're a Taurus rising, we're going to put that on the first house. Well, then Gemini, which comes after Taurus, is going to rule the second house, and that's the house of money, self-worth, income. So all people who learn to have a Taurus identity, how they look at money, self-worth, income is in a Gemini way. You see what I'm saying? It then
Yep.
flavors how they do money. For their third house, you guys think and communicate in a Cancer way because then Cancer follows Gemini. And so all Taurus risings are going to communicate more in like pictures or emotion or emotionally, like it just ties in how the energy that rules every part of your life. Um, so Taurus risings, your ancestry is based on Leo themes, which is very prideful and Leo's like abundance and nice things, and they can be very generous too. I feel like if people have Leo in the fourth house, you don't want to talk bad about their family because they'll be like, so like you see what I'm saying? That's how you know like your rising sign sets up like it creates a whole personality throughout how these energies play out in your chart. So we'll talk about that so you can see because the cool thing is every archetype, every zodiac sign that rules an area of your life has a high and a low expression. And so, depending on what planets you have in that house, that area of life, it can paint a story for how you get from the high expression to the low expression of that area of your life.
Mhm.
Really, actually, the goal in astrology is to transcend your rising sign and come back to your moon. So,
Mhm.
usually, people resonate more with their moon by 50. So, that was going to be one of the workshops, is we're going to talk about how your identity impacts how you show up in every area of your life. And then another workshop we're going to do is I wanted to go through all the planets with people so they can understand the different parts of them and have how those different planets in their birth chart each have a voice in their head. And then they can start playing around and doing some parts work and understanding that about themselves.
That sounds so awesome. I'm so excited for this. It's going to be just a real treat, I think, for all the students. So, as we're wrapping up, where can people find you? Tell us about the best place for people to learn more about you and your work.
Yeah, I'm a Substack girly now. I love Substack. So my Substack is at Astrology Magic. And
Okay.
you can find me there. I have my podcast on there. You can subscribe. You can get weekly energy reports. I talk about the astrology, different parts of the birth chart. It's fun.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to geek out about Substack later. Anyway, but for all of you who are watching, if you haven't signed up yet, go to sagesoulacademy.com. You're gonna get an amazing module with Rachel and Ryan, who's her partner, and we talked to Ryan yesterday. So go check it out. There's just so much available for you to cover and learn about what can fire you up in your life and help you just reach a place where you're living your truth, living with your mission and purpose, living in alignment, and not waking up and dreading the day. You know, to me, that's what's so important is if we can help people feel passionate about their work and their lives, then really ultimately you never work a day in your life if you're really feeling good about what you're showing up for. So check it out. Rachel, you've been just such a joy to talk to today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, and we will see you on the inside. Okay. Thanks,
Perfect.
everyone. Take care.
Bye.